Well, it's the end of an era, a send-off of probably the greatest action franchise in the history of cinema, with arguably the greatest action star to ever walk the earth. And I've got to say, I'm pretty disappointed. Like and subscribe and hit that notification bell. If you are new, check out the rest of the channel and let me know what you think. Let's dive into Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning. I came into this franchise very late in the game. The first Mission Impossible movie I'd seen was Fallout, and I saw that in the theater. Just because the reviews were just sky high. I was like, alright, there's got to be something to this franchise that I've been overlooking. I gotta go check it out. After that, I went back and I watched all of them, and except for two, I've loved every single one. And then Dead Reckoning Part 1 came out, and I very much enjoyed that as well. The action was insane. I commend the writer, director, crews, and the whole crew for trying to take this franchise to new directions. It's not just like, hey, we're trying to stop this, terrorist attack, or hey, we're trying to stop this nuke from firing from this hostile country, or whatever. They're actually mirroring this with current situations that are ongoing. Everyone on the planet right now has this sort of hesitance about AI and how is this going to transform our world? Is it going to take people out of work? Is it going to take control of governmental systems? Nobody really has any idea. So I think it's interesting for this franchise to kind of go in that direction and try and fight a new type of bad guy in a new type of territory. And I thought Dead Reckoning Part 1, or I guess now it's just Dead Reckoning, set that up, and I think it had some interesting ideas. It wasn't the most cohesive narrative, but it was very entertaining. The writing was solid, and of course the action and acting was phenomenal. That being said, I was very much looking forward to Final Reckoning, especially since this, was built as a send-off for this franchise. And it's bittersweet. And I'm just sad, because this movie is not great. And quite honestly, I think it's bottom of the list for me, right in front of Mission Impossible 2. And it's unfortunate, because I know Cruise and his team put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into this project, and I just don't think it panned out the way they wanted to. So let's get the good out of the way first, because look, this movie is very entertaining. It's a Mission Impossible movie. It's always going to be fun to watch. The action, of course, is incredible. There's a lot of cool new stunts. You think being, 8 movies deep into this franchise, that Cruise would have run out of ideas for cool action set pieces, but I mean, the biplane battle in the finale is incredible, especially learning after the fact how dangerous it is with them flying that low above the river. It's insane. There's a really fun hand-to-hand combat scene with Cruise when he's in a submarine, another where he's infiltrating a crashed submarine in this pressurized suit so he can survive like the depths of the ocean. That's really good. That scene alone, there's a ton of tension in that entire sequence. That's incredible. The action's great. Everybody knows that. The music and score is incredible. The acting's great. Where this movie falls apart is in its writing and editing. This movie, writing-wise, is a jumbled mess. It takes all the setup from Dead Reckoning and it just kind of breezes through it, and then dumps. At the beginning, there's so much exposition. They dump so much exposition, and honestly, a lot of it is stuff we already knew from the first part of this duology. So I don't understand why we had to go back and retell all of this. And I mean, that exposition goes on for probably 25 minutes. They're just dumping all, like, here's what we need to do, here's what's happening. It's kind of crazy, too, that the world has devolved so much in 2 months. This movie takes place 2 months after Dead Reckoning. And we went from a world where, like, nobody really knew what the entity was, and then, you know, once Ethan and the US government started to figure out, now everybody knows what it is, and now everybody, there's cult followings that we see on, like, newsreels of people who want the entity to take over. It's just very weird, and it doesn't feel like it matches up with how we ended the first part. Luther is just like, you know, in Dead Reckoning, he went off to figure out how to disarm or destroy the entity, and he said he had a plan and an idea, and he left to go do that alone, away from, like, where the entity could find him. And then at the beginning of this movie, Luther's, like, sick. I think it's alluded to that he's probably he has some sort of terminal sickness. I would assume cancer, and he's being tended to by this nurse while still working on some sort of, like, chip that can destroy the entity. And then he dies. And I'm all for this franchise. One of my biggest complaints is there's just not enough emotional weight and impact in this franchise sometimes. You know, we don't really lose people. You never feel like anything is all that serious. I commend them for killing off Luther. I just wish they would have done a better job of explaining what was going on, setting his storyline up and his arc in this movie before sacrificing him. Because he does get a unique, cool hero sacrifice. And Ving Rhames is still all over this movie. He has a couple narrations he gives to Ethan throughout, which are very good, I will say that. But they kind of sent him off unceremoniously. And the editing, too, they try to gloss over the heavy exposition dump in the beginning by doing some fun editing over top. And this isn't the first time this franchise has done that. They've done this style of editing before where you do dump exposition, but you play the sequences and the scenes of that exposition out, only to realize that at the end of that exposition dump, this has already taken place and Ethan's already got what he needed to get. And it's fun. It helps you, like, kind of get through that in a breeze. It's a chore in this movie because there's just so much of it. And the writing and dialogue a lot of times is very, very heavy-handed. And it's just, like I said, it's a chore to get through. And there's just so much of it. And then once we get through all that setup, then Ethan comes back with the team, then they go off again. You never really know what anyone's trying to do. It's very incohesive. And then we bring back the guy from the black box room, whatever, from Mission Impossible 1. And I guess that's interesting, but it just kind of feels way too fan servicey. He does get, like, some highlights in this movie, which is cool, I suppose. But then it's just like Ethan meets him for the first time and apologizes for ruining his life. He's like, oh, you didn't ruin my life. I met my wife. You know, I've spent my whole life in this snowy, frozen cabin on this island out in the middle of nowhere. And it's like, okay, come on, dude. You got to be a little fucking, like, pissed off that this guy pretty much ruined your career. And they do this whole thing where, like, Ethan Hunt is set up by fate as, like, the world's hero. Like, he's essentially like this Jesus Christ figure incarnate, and it's just a little silly. I don't love that part of it. I like at the end there's a narration from Ving Rhames that it's like, listen, you might not believe you're like this hero, but I know the world needs you and you have to keep going. And I think that's sweet. I think Ethan being sort of like this guy who just sees when there's evil in the world and he's just like, okay, well, if nobody's gonna take care of this, like, I gotta do something. I don't mind that, but, like, setting him up as, like, this hero sent down from the gods to, like, he's always, like, the arbiter of good. He's never wrong about anything. Like, I don't love that fact. I like Luther's perspective of him being like, hey, you're not always gonna make the right decisions, but the world needs you, and you gotta keep going for, like, the good of humanity. But they kind of they take it way too far, and it's just silly in the end. I don't know. There's a lot of fan servicey moments that are just kind of annoying. Like Shea Wingham's character is uh, the lead agent's character's son from Mission Impossible 1, which is just like, okay, who cares? We don't need that. That's unnecessary. So I don't know. The writing and the editing is all over the place. The latter half of the film is where it gets really good, with the finale, the biplane chase, the disarming of a nuke in this cave, them capturing the entity on like a 4D drive or whatever. I don't even know if that's real. I should look that up. In the movie, they say it's like this theoretical idea, but who knows? And that's it. They try to give the team a lot to do in this movie, but the truth is they don't really do anything. Grace has one big scene where she gets to use her pickpocketing skills at the end. Simon Pegg's character doesn't do a whole lot. It's just kind of sad. And then, like I said, Luther gets killed off in like the first act of the movie. And I just wish they would have taken their time to write a better film. Because this is what we got, and it's just sort of disappointing. Comparing this to like 007, like No Time to Die is not a perfect movie by any means. But I think that movie did a phenomenal job, even with its kind of bumpy writing, sending off Craig and sending off that character. This tries to do that. It just doesn't land very well at all. And then at the end, there's no kind of like, they all kind of meet in some train station and glance and smile at each other, and then they leave, and that's it. That's the end of Mission Impossible. So, all in all, a fun movie, but a disappointing one.